My name is Clara Davison, and at 29, I never thought I'd discover a family secret that would change my whole life. When my husband's parents suddenly announced their trip to the Caribbean, leaving me to look after my supposedly silent, bedridden 8-year-old niece, Daisy, I wasn't thrilled. They said she had special needs from birth, couldn't speak or move much, and needed constant care. Little did I know that just minutes after they left, my world would be flipped upside down. Before I tell you this unbelievable story, let me know in the comments where you're reading from. And don't forget to like and subscribe to hear what happened when my in-laws came back. I've always loved teaching. As a grade school teacher, I spent my life helping kids grow. My classroom was my safe place, where I felt in charge and respected. That feeling disappeared whenever I visited my husband's family. Ben and I had been married for 3 years when this happened. He was kind, smart, and loving, but he had one big weakness. He hated arguments, especially with his family. While I adored Ben, his family was a completely different story. The Evergreens were very rich, old money. Arthur Evergreen, my father-in-law, was a classic bossy businessman. He made his money in big buildings and ran his family with the same strict hand he used in meetings. Tall, powerful, and always dressed in fancy suits, he could make you feel tiny with just one look. Martha Evergreen, my mother-in-law, was just like him. Cold and calculating, she cared only about how things looked and her social standing. Her perfect blonde hair never moved, much like her unchanging face. She was a master at saying mean things that sounded like compliments. "Clara, dear, that outfit is so brave of you. I could never wear something so casual to a fancy dinner." Then there was Sarah, Ben's older sister and Daisy's mom. At 35, she'd never had a real job, living off her family's money. She had Daisy in her 20s with a man who disappeared before the baby was born. Sarah was beautiful, spoiled, and completely irresponsible. She treated her daughter more like a fancy doll than a child. David, Ben's older brother, was a successful lawyer who followed his father's every command. He rarely spoke to me directly, as if noticing me might somehow lower his status in the family. And then there was my husband, Ben, the youngest child, who desperately wanted his family's approval while trying to keep peace with me. He was stuck in the middle, and most times I felt like I was losing the fight for his loyalty. From the moment I joined the Evergreen family, I was treated like an outsider. My middle-class background and job as a public school teacher were seen with barely hidden disrespect. Nothing I did was ever good enough. My cooking was cute, my home decorating simple, and my job nice but not practical. Every family gathering was a test of my patience as I bit my tongue to keep the peace for Ben's sake. Then there was Daisy, Sarah's daughter. According to the family, Daisy was born with a severe brain problem that made her unable to speak or move on her own. She needed care all day, every day, which Sarah mostly left to a changing group of nurses and helpers. I had seen Daisy at family gatherings, always in her special wheelchair, staring blankly ahead, never reacting to anything around her. I had always felt a strange connection to the child. Something about her eyes seemed aware, even smart. But I pushed these thoughts away, thinking it was just wishful thinking. After all, I wasn't a doctor, and the family had seen the best specialists in the country. According to Martha, the whole situation with Daisy being left with me started with a phone call 3 days before their trip. Martha called not to ask, but to tell me that I would be staying at their huge house to care for Daisy while the whole family, Sarah included, enjoyed a 2-week vacation in the Caribbean. "Clara, darling, we need you to watch Daisy while we're away. Martha announced, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. What about her regular nurses? I asked, already knowing I was being tricked. Oh, we had to let them go. Such unreliable people. Besides, family should take care of family. Ben already agreed. Of course he did, without asking me first.
When I talked to Ben, he gave me his best apologetic look. Babe, they really need our help. It's just for 2 weeks, and we can stay in the guest suite. It's almost like having our own apartment. What about my job? I can't just leave my students in the middle of the semester. It's spring break next week, and Mom said she'll have Dad call the superintendent for the second week. You know, he's a big donor to the school district. And there it was, the evergreen way. Rules didn't apply to them. Duties could be changed with a phone call and a checkbook. I reluctantly agreed, not because I wanted to, but because refusing would have caused a family fight that Ben wasn't ready to handle. The day before they left, we moved into the huge evergreen mansion, and I got a quick lesson in Daisy's care from Sarah. She needs her medicine 3 times a day. It's all labeled. Don't miss a dose or she gets difficult, Sarah explained, barely looking at her daughter as she packed her fancy swimsuits. Difficult? How? I asked. Just trust me. Keep her on schedule. She handed me a thick binder. Everything's in here. Feeding instructions, medicine times, emergency contacts. Not that she'll need a doctor. It's all just for show. That last comment struck me as odd, but before I could ask about it, Arthur interrupted. Clara, understand this is a huge responsibility. We're trusting you with our precious granddaughter. Don't let us down. The family's departure the next morning was a rush of activity. Luggage was put into waiting cars, last-minute instructions were shouted. And not once did anyone, not even Sarah, stop to say a proper goodbye to Daisy, who sat in her wheelchair by the window, supposedly unaware of the chaos around her. As the cars drove away, Ben hugged me. I'm sorry, babe. Dad insisted I come along for some business meetings in San Juan. You'll be okay, right? I nodded, feeling left behind and angry as I watched my husband leave with his family, leaving me alone with the child I barely knew how to care for, standing in the huge entrance hall of the Evergreen Mansion. I looked at Daisy's blank face and sighed. Well, I guess it's just you and me now. Little did I know how quickly that statement would mean something completely new. After everyone left, I wheeled Daisy into the enormous living room and put her in front of the TV, playing a children's show as the care instructions suggested. I spoke to her softly, explaining what I was doing, though I didn't expect any answer. I'm going to make us some dinner, Daisy. I'll be right in the kitchen if you need anything. I felt silly talking to her as if she could understand, but it felt wrong to treat her like a piece of furniture. The detailed care binder said it was almost time for her evening medicine, so I went into the kitchen to prepare her special liquid diet and the many pills she supposedly needed. The Evergreen kitchen was a chef's dream, all shiny steel, marble counters, and expensive appliances that probably had rarely been used as they had a full-time cook who was also conveniently on vacation. I busied myself preparing a simple pasta dish for myself and the special nutrition shake for Daisy. As I stirred the pasta sauce, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. A tingling feeling ran up my back and I turned around, expecting to see one of the household staff I hadn't met. What I saw instead almost made me drop the wooden spoon I was holding. Daisy was standing in the doorway, not in her wheelchair. Standing on her own 2 feet. Her posture was a little shaky, but she was upright, her hand leaning against the doorframe. Daisy, I whispered, unable to believe what I was seeing. Then she spoke, her voice soft but clear, with the slight lisp of a normal 8-year-old. They want my $4 million. Please help me. The room seemed to spin around me. I gripped the counter to steady myself, sure I was imagining things. The supposedly silent, paralyzed child had just walked into the kitchen and said a perfectly clear sentence. Daisy, I repeated, my voice barely audible. You can talk and walk?
She nodded, her eyes, those smart eyes I had noticed before, now filled with fear and hope. Please don't tell them I talked to you. They'll hurt me again. I left the stove and slowly walked to her, kneeling to her level, but keeping some distance to avoid scaring her. Daisy, I don't understand. Who will hurt you? What $4 million? Her little face twisted with worry. My mom and grandpa and grandma, they pretend I'm sick so they can take my money when I'm 18. My mind raced to understand this news. How could this be possible? An entire family pretending a child was disabled? It seemed too terrible to be real.
Come sit down, I said gently, guiding her to a kitchen chair. Can you tell me more? Over the next hour, as the pasta sauce burned and was forgotten, Daisy told me her story. Her mother's parents, Sarah's former in-laws, whom the Evergreens hated, had left Daisy a trust fund of $4 million when they died in a car accident when she was 3. The money was to be held until she turned 18, with her mother as the person in charge of it. Mommy started giving me medicine after Granny and Pops died, Daisy explained. It makes me feel sleepy and weak. When I tried not to take it, she would pinch me really hard or lock me in the dark closet. Tears ran down her face as she continued. They told everyone I was born sick, but I wasn't. I remember running and playing and talking before the medicine started. I felt sick as Daisy described how she was forced to pretend she couldn't speak or move whenever anyone was around, how she was threatened and punished if she showed any signs of being normal, how the family talked about their plans to have her declared mentally unable to manage her affairs when she turned 18 so they could control her money forever. How did you know about the money? I asked, trying to process everything. Daisy's face showed a flash of pride. I taught myself to read when no one was watching. Mommy leaves papers around, and I look at them when she's out. I have a diary where I write everything down. She led me, still a little shaky, to her room, a sterile, hospital-like space that broke my heart. From under her mattress, she pulled out a small notebook and several folded documents she had apparently taken from Sarah's office over time. The diary was filled with the neat handwriting of a child who had taught herself to read and write in secret. The entries documented the family's talks about her money, the medicines they forced on her, and the threats they used to keep her silent. The documents included a copy of the trust agreement from her mother's parents, bank statements showing the large amount of money, and, disturbingly, what looked like draft papers for a mental evaluation that would declare Daisy unable to manage her own affairs. I sat on the edge of her bed, documents spread around us, feeling a mix of horror, disbelief, and anger building inside me. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Why take this risk? Daisy's eyes filled with tears again. Because you're nice. You talk to me like I'm real. And she hesitated. They've never left me with just one person before. Always nurses who believe them. I was hoping maybe you could help me. In that moment, looking at this brave little girl who had suffered years of abuse and being alone for the sake of money, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I will help you, Daisy. I promise. My phone rang, stopping our investigation. It was Martha checking in as promised. I put on my most pleasant voice, assuring her everything was fine, while Daisy sat silently beside me, her eyes wide with fear. Remember, Clara, consistency is key with Daisy's care, Martha reminded me. Any change from her routine could be problematic. Of course, I replied, my free hand clenching into a fist. Everything's going exactly according to schedule. After the call ended, we continued our search. On Sarah's computer, which Daisy knew the password to, it's always her birthday, she explained. We found emails between family members discussing the trust fund, complaints about the burden of keeping up Daisy's supposed condition, and most damning of all, plans for having her declared legally unable to manage her affairs when she turned 18. One email from Arthur to Sarah made my stomach turn. The changes to the trust are moving forward.
Judge Peterson owes me a favor. Once the paperwork is done, even if the girl somehow manages to convince someone of her ability, the money stays under family control. Keep the current methods until then. We also found legal documents showing recent changes to the trust that hadn't been approved by the court yet. These changes would give Sarah continued control over the funds, even if Daisy were somehow found to be able to manage her own affairs. In Sarah's bedroom, behind an expensive painting, we found a wall safe. Daisy didn't know the combination, but I had a hunch. I tried Sarah's birthday. Nothing. Then I tried Daisy's birthday, and the safe swung open. Inside were more financial documents, jewelry, and a USB drive. When we plugged the drive into Sarah's computer, we found medical records showing that Daisy had been completely healthy at birth. There were also videos of Daisy as a toddler running, laughing, and talking, clear proof that she had developed normally before her grandparents' death. By evening, I had gathered overwhelming proof of the Evergreen family's complex plan, but I was still missing one crucial piece of information. Why go to such extreme lengths? $4 million was certainly a lot of money, but the Evergreens were already rich. There had to be more to the story. The answer came when Daisy showed me a hidden space in her wheelchair where she had hidden various papers she'd collected over the years. Among them was a letter from her mother's grandfather to Daisy to be given to her on her 18th birthday. It had been mistakenly included in some papers Sarah had received after their death. The letter showed that the $4 million was just the beginning. The Millers had been successful oil investors who had sold their company for a huge amount of money. The main part of their estate, nearly $50 million, was held in a separate trust that would transfer to Daisy when she turned 25, but only if she was judged mentally capable and had control of the first trust. The Evergreens hadn't just been after $4 million. They were playing a long game for a fortune more than 10 times that amount. As I tucked Daisy into bed that night in a guest room far from the surveillance cameras, I felt a strong determination growing inside me. This brave little girl had suffered years of abuse and being alone, and I was now her only hope for freedom. "We're going to fix this, Daisy," I promised, smoothing her hair. "You're not alone anymore." The next morning, Daisy and I sat at the kitchen table, away from any possible surveillance cameras, planning our next steps. I needed to understand exactly what she wanted. "If you could have anything, Daisy, what would it be?" I asked gently. Her answer was immediate and heartbreaking in its simplicity. "I want to go to real school. I want friends. I want to not be afraid all the time." She paused, her small fingers tracing patterns on the table. "And I want my mom to love me for real, not just pretend in front of people." The honesty in her voice almost broke me. Despite everything her family had done to her, she still longed for their true affection. It was a painful reminder that she was, after all, just a child who wanted what every child deserves: love and safety. I knew we needed professional help. After making sure Daisy was comfortably settled with a book, she was a huge reader despite having taught herself. I stepped onto the patio to make a private phone call to my best friend, Olivia Brown. Olivia was a family lawyer who specialized in helping children. We had been friends since college, and she was one of the few people I trusted completely. I explained the situation as clearly as possible, knowing I was making extraordinary claims. "Wow, Clara," Olivia breathed after I finished. I don't even have words. If what you're saying is true, this is one of the most horrible cases of child abuse and financial exploitation I've ever heard." "It's true, Olivia. I've seen the evidence. This little girl has been trapped in her own body for 5 years so her family can steal her inheritance." "You need to document everything," Olivia advised. "Photos, copies of documents, recordings if possible. But be careful. If they catch you, they could turn this against you. They have resources and connections. She promised to look into the legal side and prepare for possible emergency court actions, but warned me against confronting the family directly without proper preparation. These people sound dangerous, Clara. They've kept up this lie for years. They won't hesitate to destroy you if you threaten their plan. After my call with Olivia, I returned to find Daisy looking worried. "Are you going to send me back to them?" she asked, her voice small. I knelt beside her chair. "Absolutely not. We're going to make sure you're safe and that nobody ever hurts you again." Over the next few days, we set up a routine. During the day, we gathered and secured evidence. I photographed documents, copied files onto a secure cloud account Olivia had set up, and helped Daisy write down her experiences in a journal that could possibly be used in court. I found a disturbing amount of surveillance throughout the house: cameras in Daisy's room, the hallways, and even some of the common areas. However, they didn't cover everywhere, and we were careful to have our most sensitive conversations in camera blind spots Olivia helped me find. We also looked into child abuse laws, inheritance rules, and the responsibilities of someone in charge of a trust. What the Evergreens were doing broke many state and federal laws. They weren't just being cruel, they were committing serious crimes. Every evening, the family would call to check in. I kept up the act, reporting that Daisy was following her usual routines and taking her medication. Meanwhile, Daisy continued to get better physically and mentally without the sedatives. Her movements became more coordinated and her personality bloomed. She was funny, curious, and remarkably strong given her situation. The question of whether to tell Ben weighed heavily on me. He was my husband, and I wanted to believe he wasn't part of this conspiracy. But his blind loyalty to his family made me hesitate to trust him fully. 5 days into our time alone, I decided to test the waters. I called Ben while Daisy was napping. "Hey, how's the Caribbean?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Amazing. Dad's meeting finished early, so we've been hitting the beach. How are things with Daisy?" I took a deep breath. "Actually, I've noticed some strange things. Her medical routine seems extreme, and I found some documents about her trust fund that seemed concerning." There was a pause before Ben responded, his voice noticeably cooler. "Clara, you know nothing about Daisy's condition. The medication is necessary and her financial arrangements are none of your business." "But Ben, don't you think—" "Look, Sarah knows what's best for her daughter. Just follow the instructions and stop snooping through family papers. That's totally inappropriate." His dismissive response confirmed my worst fears. Whether Ben was actively involved or just willingly ignorant, he couldn't be trusted to help Daisy. "You're right. I lied. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to do my best here." After hanging up, I sat in silence, my resolve hardening. I was on my own in this. Me and an 8-year-old girl against a powerful, wealthy family willing to destroy a child's life for money. During our week together, I also focused on helping Daisy experience normal childhood activities that had been denied to her by her family. We baked cookies, played board games, and watched movies appropriate for her age rather than the baby programs her family forced on her. I taught her simple card games and was amazed at how quickly she learned. "No one's ever played with me before," she admitted during the game of Go Fish. "They just put me in front of the TV." I also worked on Daisy with basic self-advocacy skills and prepared her for possible interviews with authorities. We practiced how she might answer questions about her treatment and the deception she had been forced to be a part of. "Remember, you've done nothing wrong," I emphasized. "The adults who were supposed to protect you failed. None of this is your fault." Olivia provided guidance on preparing for the family's return. We secured copies of all evidence in multiple locations, including with Olivia herself. We developed a code phrase Daisy could use if she felt unsafe, and I programmed emergency numbers into a small phone I bought and hid in her room. The night before the family was scheduled to return, Daisy and I finished our preparations. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical records showing the healthy child until age 3, faked later records, financial documents revealing the trust manipulation, emails discussing the deception, and Daisy's own testimony. As we sat in the kitchen eating ice cream, another simple pleasure Daisy had been denied, she looked up at me with serious eyes. What if they don't believe us? What if they make me go back to pretending? I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That's not going to happen. Too many people know the truth now. You're not alone anymore. What I didn't tell her was my fear that the Evergreen's wealth and connections might still win, that justice wasn't always served, especially when facing opponents with unlimited resources. But I was determined to fight with everything I had. Tomorrow will be hard, I warned gently, but remember how brave you've been all these years. Just a little longer, and then you'll be free. As I tucked her into bed, Daisy wrapped her arms around my neck in a tight hug. "Thank you for believing me," she whispered. I held her close, my heart aching for all the years of affection she had been denied. "Always," I promised. "Now, get some sleep. Tomorrow is a big day." Little did I know that tomorrow would arrive much sooner than expected. At 3 a.m, I was suddenly awakened by the sound of the front door opening and voices in the entrance hall. The family wasn't supposed to return until the afternoon, but here they were in the middle of the night, catching us completely off guard. I hurried to Daisy's room and found her already awake, her eyes wide with fear. "They're back early," she whispered, trembling. "They sometimes do this to check if I'm being good when no one expects it." I helped her quickly return to her official bedroom with the monitoring equipment. "Remember our plan," I whispered. "No matter what happens, I won't let them hurt you again." I had barely settled her when Sarah appeared in the doorway, still in travel clothes. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded. "I heard noises and came to check on Daisy," I improvised. "You're back early." "Daddy's business concluded sooner than expected," she replied, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Has everything been going according to schedule?" "Of course," I lied smoothly. "Exactly as you instructed." Sarah pushed past me to approach Daisy's bed. "Let me see her." I watched tensely as she examined her daughter, looking for any signs that might give away our deception. Daisy played her part perfectly, remaining limp and expressionless as Sarah checked her. "Her medication?" Sarah asked sharply. "All given as prescribed," I assured her. "The logs are in the kitchen." Sarah seemed satisfied for the moment and left to join the rest of the family downstairs. I squeezed Daisy's hand reassuringly before following. In the living room, the entire Evergreen family was gathered despite the early hour. Arthur and Martha sat formally on the sofa, while David paced by the fireplace. Ben stood awkwardly near the entrance, avoiding my eyes. "Clara," Arthur acknowledged me coldly, "I trust everything has been satisfactory in our absence." "Yes," I replied simply, deciding to let them show their hand first. Martha studied me with calculating eyes. "Curious. Sarah checked the medication supply before we left. It seems several doses are unaccounted for." My heart raced, but I kept my face neutral. "I followed the instructions precisely. Perhaps there was a miscount before you left." "Perhaps," Martha conceded, though her tone suggested she believed nothing of the sort. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room until it was broken by a sound that caused everyone to freeze. Footsteps on the stairs. All heads turned as Daisy appeared in the doorway, standing perfectly straight, fully dressed, and very much alert. "Hello, Mommy," she said clearly. "Hello, Grandma and Grandpa. I'm feeling much better now." The room exploded into chaos. Sarah lunged toward Daisy with a choke cry. David cursed loudly, and Martha pressed her hand to her chest in dramatic shock. Arthur's face turned an alarming shade of red as he rounded on me. "What have you done?" he thundered. I moved quickly to stand between him and Daisy. "I've done nothing, except stop drugging an innocent child." Sarah grabbed Daisy's arm roughly. "She needs her medication right now. She's having some kind of episode." "No!" Daisy cried. pulling away with a strength that surprised everyone. "I won't take it anymore. I know what you're doing. I know about my money." The room fell silent again, this stunned quiet even deeper than the first. "Clara," Sarah said with forced calm, "my daughter is severely disabled and delusional. She needs immediate medical attention." "She's neither disabled nor delusional. She's been pretending for years because you threatened and abused her. I know everything, Sarah, about the trust fund, about the medications, about the surveillance, all of it." Arthur stepped forward, his imposing figure towering over me. "You have no idea what you're talking about. This is a family matter that you have grossly misunderstood." "I've misunderstood nothing," I replied, standing my ground. "I've seen the documents, the emails, the videos of Daisy as a healthy toddler before her grandparents died and left her millions." Martha tried a different approach, her voice sweet. "Clara, dear, you've been under tremendous stress caring for a special needs child. It's understandable that you might be confused. Why don't you and Ben go home and rest while we handle Daisy's care?" Ben finally spoke up, his voice uncertain. "Clara, maybe Mom's right. This is a lot. Let's go home and talk." "There's nothing to discuss. Your family has been abusing Daisy for years, and I won't walk away and let it continue." Sarah suddenly changed tactics, her face twisting with rage. You've been snooping through my private papers? You have no right." She lunged for Daisy again, this time with a prescription bottle she'd pulled from her purse. "You're taking your medicine right now, young lady." I intercepted her, blocking her path to Daisy. "Don't touch her." Arthur grabbed my arm painfully. "This is criminal trespassing and interference with a child's medical care. I'm calling the police." "Please do," I replied calmly. "I'm sure they'll be very interested in the evidence I've gathered." "Evidence?" David scoffed. "What evidence could you possibly have against our word? We're the Evergreens. You're nobody." "I have copies of all the financial documents showing how you've been manipulating Daisy's trust fund. I have the falsified medical records. I have the emails where you discuss your plans to have her declared unable to manage her own affairs when she turns 18 so you can keep control of her inheritance." With each item I listed, I watched their faces grow paler. "Most importantly, I have Daisy herself, a perfectly healthy, intelligent 8-year-old who can testify to years of abuse and medical neglect."
Sarah's expression turned vicious. "No one will believe her. She's been diagnosed with severe brain problems since she was 3. "Diagnosed by doctors your father paid off," I countered. "The truth will come out." Arthur stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I can destroy you, your career, your reputation. One phone call and you'll never teach again." Ben finally seemed to grasp how serious the situation was. "Dad, what are you talking about? What's going on here?" Before Arthur could respond, Sarah made another grab for Daisy, this time succeeding in catching her arm. She tried to force a pill into Daisy's mouth. "Take it," she hissed. "Take it now or you'll regret it." Daisy struggled, crying out in pain as Sarah twisted her arm. "No, let me go." Something in me snapped. I shoved Sarah away from Daisy with more force than I intended, sending her stumbling back against an antique table. "Don't you dare touch her," I shouted. Arthur moved toward me with clear menace. "That's assault. David, call the police. We'll have her arrested." "I wouldn't do that if I were you," I said, pulling out my phone, "because the police and Child Protective Services have already been contacted." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Arthur froze mid-step, his face a mask of capulation. "You're bluffing," he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Am I?" I held up my phone, showing them the call history. "My friend Olivia Brown, perhaps you've heard of her. She's one of the top family lawyers in the state. She's been documenting everything we've discovered." Martha's perfectly maintained composure began to crack. "Arthur, perhaps we should discuss this privately." Before he could respond, the doorbell rang, its chime echoing through the tense silence of the room. David moved to the window and cursed. "There's a police car in the driveway."
The color drained from Arthur's face. "Nobody say a word. I'll handle this." But when he opened the door, it wasn't just the police. Olivia stood there with two officers and a woman I recognized as a CPS caseworker. Olivia had delivered exactly as promised. "Mr. Evergreen," Olivia greeted him professionally. "I'm Olivia Brown, attorney at law. I believe you've been expecting us." Arthur tried to regain control of the situation. "There's been a misunderstanding. My daughter-in-law has been interfering with my granddaughter's medical care. The child is severely disabled and needs immediate attention." Olivia remained unfazed. "That's not what the evidence suggests, Mr. Evergreen. We have reason to believe Daisy Evergreen has been subjected to long-term medical abuse and financial exploitation." The officers asked to speak with Daisy, and despite Arthur's objections, they insisted. As the situation unfolded, I watched Ben closely. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then dawning horror as he began to piece together the truth. Our eyes met across the room, and I silently pleaded with him to choose the right side, to choose Daisy. The critical moment came when Sarah, seeing her plan falling apart, made one last desperate attempt. "Daisy has severe developmental issues," she insisted to the CPS worker. "She imagines things and makes up stories. She needs her medication immediately." The caseworker asked to see the medication, and Sarah handed over the bottle. The worker read the label carefully. "This is a powerful sedative, Miss Evergreen, not typically prescribed for children except in extreme cases." "She is an extreme case," Sarah snapped. "Then you won't mind if we have her evaluated by an independent doctor," the caseworker replied calmly. Sarah's composure cracked. "You can't take her. She's my daughter." "A daughter you've been drugging and abusing for 5 years?" I interjected. "You shut up," Sarah screamed, lunging at me. One of the officers stepped between us, holding her back. In that moment of chaos, Ben moved to my side, finally breaking his paralysis. He looked at Daisy, who was trembling but standing tall. "Daisy," he said gently, kneeling to her level, "can you tell me the truth? Has my family been hurting you?" Daisy looked at me with tired eyes, then at me. I nodded encouragingly. "They make me take medicine that makes me sick. They tell me if I talk or move when people are around, they'll send me away forever. They want my money from my other grandparents." Ben's face crumpled. He turned to his family, who were all watching him with a mix of rage and calculation. "Is this true? Have you been abusing this child for money?" Arthur tried to fix the situation. "Son, you're being manipulated. Your wife has filled your head with lies." "No more lies," Ben replied firmly. "I want the truth." Martha tried next. "Ben, darling, you know Daisy's condition. We've all sacrificed so much to care for her." "Then you won't mind proving her condition with independent doctors," Ben countered. The standoff might have continued, but Olivia stepped forward with a folder. "I have copies of all the evidence Clara has gathered, financial records, emails, medical documentation, enough to launch a criminal investigation." She turned to Sarah. "Including your emails discussing how to have Daisy declared unable to manage her affairs when she turns 18 to maintain control of her trust." Sarah's face drained of color. "Those were private." "They're evidence of conspiracy and child abuse," Olivia corrected. Arthur, always the businessman, quickly understood the situation and changed tactics. He lowered his voice and addressed the officers. "Perhaps we can discuss this matter privately. I'm sure we can make an arrangement that benefits everyone." The meaning was clear. He was offering a bribe. The lead officer's expression hardened. "Mr. Evergreen, are you attempting to interfere with a police investigation?" Arthur backed away immediately. "Of course not. I'm simply suggesting that this family matter could be resolved without unnecessary publicity." "Child abuse is not a family matter," the officer replied coldly. "It's a criminal offense." What happened next shocked everyone. Sarah, seeing no way out, broke down completely. "It was Daddy's idea," she cried, pointing to Arthur. "He said Daisy's inheritance could solve all our problems. The company was failing. We needed the capital. He said no one would question it if Daisy had special needs." "Sarah, shut up," Arthur bellowed, but it was too late. He arranged everything, the doctors, the medications. I just did what he told me," she continued, tears streaming down her face. "He said it was only temporary, just until we stabilized the business. But then it went on, and I didn't know how to stop it." The officers exchanged glances. Sarah had just confessed to child abuse and fraud in front of multiple witnesses. Martha, always aware of appearances, tried to fix the damage. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding. We only wanted what was best for Daisy." By drugging her into submission and stealing her inheritance, I couldn't help but interject.
The next few hours passed in a blur. Daisy was taken to the hospital for evaluation, accompanied by the CPS worker, and at my insistence, myself. Ben came with us, shocked, but determined to make things right. Arthur and Sarah were taken to the police station for questioning, while Martha and David were told not to leave town as the investigation continued. The family's carefully built facade had crumbled in a single night. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what we already knew. Daisy was physically and mentally normal for her age, though some areas were delayed due to being alone and on medication. There were no signs of any birth disorder or disability. As Daisy underwent various tests, Ben and I sat in the waiting room, the weight of the night's revelations hanging between us. "I had no idea," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I swear, Clara, I didn't know what they were doing." "You didn't want to know," I corrected gently. "There were signs, Ben. You chose not to see them." He nodded, accepting the truth of my words. "What happens now?" "Now we make sure Daisy is safe and gets justice. Everything else is secondary." Ben reached for my hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I let him take it. We had a long road ahead of us, but at least we were finally on the same side. Later that night, as Daisy slept in her hospital bed, watched by nurses who knew the truth, Olivia updated us on the legal situation. Sarah's confession complicates things for Arthur. He's already trying to claim she acted alone, but the evidence suggests otherwise. They're both facing serious charges: child abuse, fraud, financial exploitation of a minor. Martha and David might be involved as well, depending on how much they knew. "And Daisy?" I asked, the only question that really mattered. "The court will appoint a special guardian to represent her interests. Given the circumstances, they'll want to place her with family, but obviously not with Sarah or the elder Evergreens." Ben and I exchanged glances. "We could take her," he said quietly, "if she wants that." It wasn't a simple solution. Ben was still processing his family's betrayal, and our marriage had been hit hard by his initial reaction. But it was a start, a commitment to putting Daisy's needs first. "One step at a time," Olivia advised. "The important thing is that she's safe now. You did that, Clara. You saved her." As I looked through the doorway at the sleeping child who had shown such incredible courage, I felt a mix of relief and resolve. The confrontation had been won, but the battle for Daisy's future was just beginning. 3 months after that fateful night, I sat in a sunny courtroom watching as the judge finalized our temporary guardianship of Daisy. The last 3 months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, therapy appointments, and adjustments to our new family structure. The Evergreen family had fallen apart spectacularly. Arthur and Sarah had both been charged with many serious crimes, including child abuse, fraud, and financial exploitation of a minor. Arthur's attempt to buy his way out of trouble had backfired when he tried to bribe a detective, adding witness tampering to his growing list of charges. Sarah, continuing her strategy of saving herself, had agreed to testify against her father in exchange for a plea deal. She still faced significant jail time, though less than she might have otherwise. In her clearer moments, she expressed regret for her treatment of Daisy, though it was hard to tell her regret was real or just for show. Martha had avoided criminal charges due to not enough proof of direct involvement, but she had been named in civil lawsuits regarding the mismanagement of Daisy's trust. Her reputation in high society, the thing she valued most, was in ruins. The charity organizations she had once led quietly asked her to step down. David had managed to legally distance himself from the worst of the scandal, claiming he didn't know the full extent of the plan, but his career had suffered nonetheless, with his law firm putting him on indefinite leave while legal inquiries proceeded. As for Ben and me, we had started intensive marriage counseling. His failure to believe me initially had created a gap that wouldn't heal overnight.
But his unwavering support of Daisy since the truth came out had given us the foundation to rebuild upon. He had cut financial ties to his family and was starting his own consulting business, determined to make his own way without the evergreen fortune or connections. The most remarkable change, however, had been Daisy's. Free from medication and fear, she had blossomed like a flower finally given sunlight and water. Her physical strength had returned quickly, and though she had learning gaps to fill, her intelligence and curiosity made her a quick learner. The court had appointed a respected financial manager as the new person in charge of Daisy's inheritance, with strict oversight. The trust would provide for her education and care while protecting the main amount until she came of age. The existence of the larger inheritance waiting at 25 had been confirmed, securing her long-term future.
Therapy was helping Daisy process her years of trauma. Though the road to full emotional recovery would be long, some nights she still woke with nightmares, calling out in fear that her mother or grandfather was coming to punish her for speaking. On those nights, I would sit with her, reassuring her that she was safe, that no one would hurt her again. We had enrolled her in school, a small private academy with experience handling children with unusual backgrounds. After initial adjustment difficulties, she had begun to make friends and participate in normal childhood activities. Her first sleepover had been a big moment, celebrated with ice cream and a movie marathon. As the judge signed the final guardianship papers, Daisy squeezed my hand, her face shining with hope. "It's official now." "It's official," I confirmed. "You're staying with us." Outside the courtroom, Olivia met us with a smile. "Congratulations! The hard part is over." "Is it ever really over?" I asked quietly, thinking of the years of healing still ahead. "The worst is," she assured me. "You gave her a future, Clara. Not many people would have had the courage to do what you did." Inspired by our experience, Olivia and I had started a foundation to help find and support other children in similar situations, victims of medical child abuse and financial exploitation. It was just starting, but we had already connected with families across the country whose stories echo Daisy's in disturbing ways. That evening, we celebrated with a small party at our new home, a modest house we had bought in a family-friendly neighborhood far from the evergreen mansion with its painful memories. Ben grilled burgers while Daisy played in the backyard with two friends from school. Their laughter was a healing balm after so much silence and pain. As I watched her run and jump, her face bright with joy, I thought about how close she had come to losing her childhood entirely, how easily her story could have had a different ending if she hadn't found the courage to trust me that night in the kitchen. The next morning was another big step, Daisy's first day at my school. I had returned to teaching, and though we had initially thought about different schools to give her independence, Daisy had insisted she wanted to be where I was. "Ready for your first day?" I asked as I helped her adjust her backpack. She nodded, nervous but excited. "Do you think the other kids will like me?" "They'll love you," I assured her. "Just be yourself." As we walked through the school doors together, Daisy's hand in mine, I thought about the extraordinary journey that had brought us here. From reluctant caregiver to fierce advocate, from isolated victim to thriving child, we had both been changed by the truth and the courage to stand by it. That night, after Daisy had gone to bed, exhausted but happy after her successful first day, Ben and I sat on the porch swing, talking quietly about the future. "She asked me today if she could call us Mom and Dad," Ben said, his voice baked with emotion. "What did you tell her?" "That she could call us whatever makes her comfortable. That family isn't always about blood." I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling a sense of peace that had been missing for months. "We're going to be okay, aren't we? All of us. Better than okay," he promised. "We're going to be the family she deserves." The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more court dates, therapy sessions, and unavoidable challenges as Daisy continued to process her trauma. But watching her grow stronger each day, seeing her reclaim the childhood that had been stolen from her, made every difficulty worthwhile. The most profound lesson I had learned through all of this was about the courage it takes to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Sometimes standing up for what's right means standing alone against powerful forces. Sometimes it means risking everything you have for someone who has nothing. But in that risk comes the greatest reward, the knowledge that you've changed a life forever, that you've helped rewrite a story that was heading toward tragedy into one of triumph and hope. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have had the courage to stand up against a powerful family to protect a child you barely knew? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if Daisy's story touched your heart. Your support helps us reach others who might be facing similar struggles. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most important voice is the quietest one.